I don't want to do the intro because people are going to criticize me. Getting your writing critiqued is one of the most painful things in the world. I mean, I can think of things that are more painful, but they're all like dental procedures and accidents involving machinery, or accidents involving dental machinery. My point is, critique is hard, both to give and to get. And it doesn't help that most writers are bad at giving critique. Critiquing relationships can break down for all kinds of reasons: communication, mismatched expectations, just general personal friction. All of these things can be helped somewhat by getting better at critiquing, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get into specific tips, I want to define what I mean by critiquing. What I'm talking about really is the process of getting feedback on your writing from another writer. Critiquing is different from beta reading and also editing. Beta reading is more getting a reader's perspective on your work, usually a finished novel at that point, which is slightly different than getting critique from another writer. And editing is usually a more professional engagement where you're paying someone to give you critique, but it's a little bit different from what you think of when you think of a critique group or getting critique online or something like that. My first piece of advice when it comes to critiquing is don't give critique unless it's asked for, and if it is asked for, make sure you're critiquing the right things. This might come as a surprise to some people, but just because a piece of writing or any other artistic work is out there in the world, it doesn't automatically mean that the creator of that work is open to criticism. Now, obviously, if you're in a specific critique group or you're online on a critiquing website, then yes, the writing that's presented there, it's expected that it's going to be critiqued. However, if somebody just brings you a piece of writing that they've written and they ask you to read it, they might not necessarily want a full-on critique of that writing. They might just want some encouragement. They might just want to share this cool thing that they've written that they think you'll like. The proper thing to do in this case is to communicate and ask the person, hey, do you just want me to read it or do you want some feedback on it? Make it clear what it is the person wants by bringing it to you. They might just respect you or consider you a friend and want you to read some work that they've created. Even when you know that the work is being presented to you for critique, you need to make sure you're critiquing the right thing. Critiquing exists on this sort of spectrum from higher level developmental type critiques about things like characters and plot and setting, all the way down to finer level details like prose, the flow of the text, dialogue, those sorts of things, all the way down to the sort of nitty-gritty aspects of writing like spelling, grammar, syntax, punctuation, comma use. It's important when you're critiquing someone else's work to understand where on that spectrum they're expecting the critique to land. If they're in an early draft, like first or second draft, they might be more concerned with the developmental elements of the story. They might just want feedback on the plot, the flow, the feeling, the characters. They might not be at a stage yet where they're wanting the prose to be completely picked apart and evaluated. On the flip side of that, if they're in a later draft, they might have already settled on the plot and characters and be happy with the overall story, and now they just want to refine things and get the prose right. Critiquing the wrong thing is problematic for a few different reasons. First off, if you do line edits on a first draft, you're wasting a lot of time because most of that prose is either going to be changed or rewritten or just cut out entirely. So it's just a complete waste of your and your critique partner's time. Second problem is if the writer of the work has a specific element that they want to improve at that time, you giving them a bunch of advice about other elements may not be that helpful or very welcome. The proper thing to do here, if you're giving critique, is to ask what specific aspects of the work the person wants critiqued. And if you're seeking a critique, make sure that you communicate that to the person who's critiquing you. And yes, it's valid to say, yeah, just go critique everything. Prose, development, characters, everything. Just provide a broad critique against everything. But that's only valid if that's what the writer seeking critique wants. Every serious writer out there has a plan for how they want to improve their writing through time, and that usually involves getting feedback and improving specific aspects of their writing at specific times. You, as a critique partner, shouldn't assume you know what their plan is, and you also shouldn't assume that the things you think they should be working on are the things that they should be working on. Next up, advice number 2 is to work within the author's vision. You'll see pro authors get asked occasionally about if their editor or their publisher has ever pushed them to like change the plot of a story or change a character or something like that. And while there are cases of that happening, I'm sure most of the time, good editors recognize the vision of the author they're working with and work to help them achieve that vision. They don't try to change the vision. This is the box that you should work in as a critique partner. You should get to know and understand what it is your partner is trying to achieve with their work, and you should help them achieve that vision. Even if you disagree with it, even if you don't think it works, you should try to critique every scene through the lens of achieving whatever it is the author wants to achieve with that scene. Now, it's possible that they could be looking for some help with that vision. They might have a character or a setting or a plot that they just don't know what direction to take, and you as a critique partner can provide them some help on that vision, on that direction. But if they already have a vision in mind, if they already have a plan for where they want the story to go, you should help them achieve that rather than trying to change that because you think there's something that's better. This also includes things like style and voice. If your critique partner has decided that their story is going to be written in first person present tense, then you should try to make it as best as possible using that perspective. You shouldn't try to move them to make it third limited or whatever. Always critique with the goals of the other author in mind. Give suggestions to improve the work in light of that vision. And the last piece of advice that I have, and I tried to come up with a compelling way to phrase this, but basically just comes down to don't be a jerk. There's this belief in some circles that you need to toughen up your critique partners, that you should be as harsh as possible, that you should approach the writing in as negative a fashion as you possibly can, that that's somehow the best way to help somebody improve. I generally disagree with this. I think that people who can't deliver criticism in a way that doesn't make the other person feel bad are just really bad at delivering criticism and communicating in general. There is a fine line between giving undue praise, which you shouldn't do, and just destroying someone's confidence. You can deliver critique in a way that gets all of the information across that that person needs to improve without making them feel like crap. If you can't do that, then that's a lack of skill. That's not you toughening up the other person. I mean, for God's sake, these are fiction writers. They're not Marines storming a beach somewhere. Like this, I don't know where this idea of toughening people up comes from. A lot of people view critiquing as kind of this transactional relationship where if you're giving critique for someone, you're doing them a major favor and they should just accept whatever you're doing and you shouldn't go out of your way to accommodate them in any way. And I think that whole idea is a little bit flawed. If you are giving critique, if someone has decided to let you critique their work, you're being given an opportunity to improve your skills. It's a two-way street. It's not a zero-sum thing that you're giving to them completely at your own expense. This is one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of these online critiquing websites where there isn't sort of the automatic reciprocity of critiquing where like you're critiquing their work, but they're critiquing other people's work. I believe that the best critique relationships are reciprocal, where you critique each other's work. I want critique partners who are committed to my success, critique partners who want my writing to get better, people who have some skin in the game, as it were, about my skills improving. If someone ultimately doesn't care and this is just kind of like a drive-by thing that they're throwing at you as a favor. I don't think that sets the right tone for a critiquing relationship. When you critique someone's work, you're taking some responsibility for their improvement because theoretically, at least, they're going to take your advice and act on it. And the actions that they take based on your advice are, to one degree or another, going to determine how that work improves in quality. So if you don't care and all you're doing is just kind of browbeating that person and harshly tearing their work apart, I don't know how that translates to long-term improvement. There's a few things that you can do that kind of temper the intensity of your critiques, and I think your critique partners will thank you for these. One big part of it is communications. I think just understanding what the person is looking to get out of that critique, what their goals are for the work, all of that sort of thing. That can really be helpful. Another thing that can help here is give actionable, specific criticisms of specific parts of the work. Don't just give overall assessments. Don't just say, I found this confusing, or this was really hard to read, or this wasn't emotionally engaging. Highlight what specific parts of the work led to that and offer actionable solutions to the problems that you've discovered. Avoid these sort of overall impressions of the work, which really read to your critique partner like assessments of their writing. Another part of this, I think, is recognizing the potential in the writing. Every writer, even someone who's just starting out, who probably has really rough prose, is going to be doing some things well. Critiquing is not just about finding the bad parts that need to be fixed, it's also about finding the good parts, the things that are already working well. This gives the author a good base which they can work from and also gives them some encouragement. There's a lot that goes into giving a good critique. It is, I would argue, possibly even harder than writing because it involves a level of human communication, and human communication always makes things more difficult. Recognize that giving critique is a skill that you need to work on. It's something that you need a lot of experience doing, and it's something that you should be actively trying to improve. And hopefully this video was a small part of that improvement. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.